my fellow Marks, and welcome to this Christmassy edition of the Remark. Yes, it's that time of year again where children believe that a fat bearded man can work really fast and put on a good show and make everybody happy. But then the children grow up and realize that the big show is actually quite shit, and complain about him on the internet instead. In this video, I'm taking a page out of the WWE's book, and instead of giving the audience what they want, I'm making the shrewd business decision of doing whatever the fuck I want, and fuck you. And that happens to be watching shite straight-to-DVD movies. This time I'll be taking a look at Santa's Little Helper, not to be confused with other timeless Christmas classics that star wrestlers, such as Santa with Muscles or Santa's Sleigh. No, see, those films starred self-deluded retired egomaniacal wrestlers. This film stars self-deluded, currently employed egomaniacal wrestlers. Yes, The Miz stars in this modern-day retelling of a bunch of different Christmas stories that had sex and produced this fucked-up festive flipper baby. Think of it as Miracle on 34th Street meets A Christmas Carol meets a bunch of armed thugs in a back alley who beat the shit out of the movie and rob it of all its charm, leaving us clutching onto this hollow mess. Also featured is two-time Divas champion Paige, who is so pale that whenever it snows throughout the course of the film, she disappears, leaving her with only 5 minutes of screen time. But is it really worth stomaching 90 minutes of The Miz just to see Paige dressed like an elf? Yes. Yes, it is. John Cena Studios is proud to present Santa's Little Helper, a film about what Mick Foley calls his penis. The movie opens with a series of establishing shots of Santa Monica during the holiday season, because when you think Christmas, you think of the hot, crowded beaches of Santa Monica. Hey, there's the guy who sells me weed. Merry Christmas, weed guy. A sports car pulls up outside a youth center, and the license plate simply reads Dax. So the car either belongs to Kristen Bell's husband or one of the hot trill chicks from Deep Space Nine. Oh no, it turns out it belongs to The Miz, so we can assume that whoever made the license plate accidentally replaced the letter I with an A, and then forgot to write I eat before it. A nearby Santa impersonator tells Miz that he parked in a handicap spot, so the Miz thanks him and places a handicap sticker on the front of his car. You might think that the Miz is just being a giant prick, but it turns out he really does need that handicap sticker. He lost his ability to act in a horrible accident. You may know it as Marine 4, Moving Target. Fake Santa tells Miz to check his privilege.
Not exactly bucking for the nice list, are you?
Nope. Focusing on the richness.
Yes, his get-rich-quick scheme that involves parking illegally so he can get places 5 seconds quicker is clearly working. I mean, he has a custom license plate. That's some upper-class shit. We cut to a terrifying portrait of Freddy Krueger when he was a teenager, and his skin was even more upsetting, and then we see a teacher is helping a group of youths to paint. Strangely, the kids featured here are using the youth center as a place to learn, and not just a place to hide from bullies and or their parents. The Miz shows up and the teacher gets into a heated discussion with him, begging him to give them an extension on their lease. But if there's one thing we've learned from the Miz's Niagara commercials, it's that he can't give an extension, even if he wants to. The teacher insists that if they were able to put on their Christmas play this year, they could raise the money.
They have been selling tickets all over town.
Unless you're charging Broadway prices, it's not even gonna make a dent.
I know I would pay Broadway prices to see Little Jimmy's interpretation of the back half of the camel that Joseph and Mary rode in on. Also starring Idina Menzel as Baby Jesus. The Miz denies her pleas and tells her to vacate the premises by the 15th, as that's when the bulldozers will be here. Yes, that is an actual subplot in this film. Saving a youth center. It's just like Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. Only without the electricity. Or the boogaloo. You heard me. There is precisely zero boogaloo content in this film. One of the youths tries chasing the Miz down to give him a piece of his mind. And what follows is a brief summary of how the fans reacted to the ending of the feud between Miz and Damien Sandow.
I can't believe you're doing this. You suck.
Life's full of disappointments, kid. Get used to it.
Miz stops for a minute and stares at a carving in a wooden bench of the words Dax 98 next to a spaceship, implying that he carved that there when he was a kid. That's right, Miz's character wanted to fly to space when he was a young boy. Clearly, he gave up on that dream when he realized that space travel would require him to acknowledge the fact that the universe doesn't revolve around him. Dax leaves the youth center and parks at his office building in a space marked hilariously Dax the Axe. And don't forget, an axe can be both a weapon and a tool. and I'm fairly certain in this movie it's falling into the tool category. Dax enters the building and greets all of his co-workers, who hate him because none of their parking spots are labeled with childish rhyming nicknames that they should have dropped when they were 15. Dax strikes up a conversation with a security guard and tries lecturing him on how to behave as a new employee, and then it turns out the security guard has been working there for the last 16 years. This scene is based on an actual conversation that Vince McMahon had with Mark Henry. In fact, Vince is still convinced that this security guard is played by Shelton Benjamin. Dax meets with his boss, who calls him a shark. Miz deflects it by saying he learned from the best.
Nobody can teach a shark how to be a shark. A shark just is.
Sharks. They just are. Just when he thought it was safe to go back into the water, Dax's boss fires him, saying that another employee named Henderson has proved that he can do Dax's job just as well as he can, as well as his own. Henderson also comes with his own pet Sasquatch and a short-lived television series, so it's not a fair contest. The screenwriter audibly pats himself on the back.
You're giving Dax the axe. The axe?
That's a real clever way of putting it.
Ah, you see, the bluntly established nickname came back to bite him in the axe. And yes, that's about as forced as the joke was in the film. Dax implores his boss.
But it's almost Christmas.
Come on, like that's ever worked. Have some dignity.
You put up a cheap sign that says Dax the Axe in the parking lot for him, and now you want him to have some dignity. Make up your mind! Dax's boss threatens to have him thrown out by security, so Dax has the rational and relatable reaction of breaking the boss's table to tiny pieces. See, this is exactly what the New Day were talking about when they started the Save the Tables revolution. Some people say Paige started the Save the Tables revolution. Dax then chases his boss through the office building and throws his signed Super Bowl football at him, while the rest of the employees go about their business as if nothing is wrong, and there isn't a crazed muscular man chasing their boss with bloodlust in his eyes. None of that's happening, apparently. Then the movie suddenly becomes Robin Hood, Prince of Real Estate Agents, and we get a point of view shot of the football as it flies through the air and misses Dax's boss and hits the security guard square in the face. The security guard then punches Dax in the face to knock him out, which by itself is more work than most security guards would have done in his entire 16-year career. We then cut to Dax's house, which is of course more expensive than anything that any of us could afford in our entire lifetime, which makes us relate to Dax even more than we did when we learned he wanted to be a spaceship or something. Dax nurses his concussion with a bag of frozen peas, which is still better treatment than most WWE wrestlers get. He complains openly to his girlfriend, while she spends the entire scene packing her stuff so she can leave him.
We had fun, but a smart girl knows when to leave a sinking ship.
If they were married and they separated, would that make her Ms. Miz? Miz understands and respects her decision to leave him.
Whoever accused you of being smart.
Or that. A man hands Dax a contract and he signs it without reading it. Turns out he unknowingly just signed with TNA for the next 5 years. This is somehow worse for him than being unemployed and having no steady income. No, in actuality, the man is towing Dax's car, complete with custom license plate. Well, now when somebody else drives it, it's going to look silly, as opposed to before, when it looked completely normal and not obnoxious in the least. Later that night, The Miz walks over to the youth center and cuts a promo on it.
You beat me once, but I'm taking you down! You hear me? I'm taking you down!
Looks like they're finally setting up for that long-awaited Miz versus a building grudge match at WrestleMania next year. The fake Santa from earlier is still randomly here in full costume, and The Miz asks him quite rightly what he's doing here.
Why are you here?
Maybe I was looking for you.
I appreciate the compliment, but I play for you.
No.
No homo. Santa explains that he thought Dax might need some help, and Dax asks how Santa knows his name. Turns out that much like sharks just are, Santa just does. Santa asks Dax what he wants for Christmas.
I have no car, no money, no job, no friends. How about a pony, Santa?
So he's unemployed, he doesn't have a girlfriend anymore, and he's a brony. Checks out. Fake Santa tells Dax that it's never too late to be the person you're meant to be, and Dax tells him that that's so good, he should put that in one of those self-help books. Later, Fake Santa would go on to create the fake religion Scientology based on this very idea. We then cut to Santa's workshop in the North Pole, located somewhere in Canada. There's all the usual Santa Claus trappings. Elves making shitty wooden toys that nobody wants. Mrs. Claus because, as established in the previous scene, Santa is totes straight. date, and Santa's fitness instructor, Billy. You remember Santa's fitness instructor, right? From all the classic Christmas tales? She's totally a thing. And no, I'm not joking. This character is intrinsic to the story of this movie. So if you're going to tell me that you've never heard of Santa's personal fitness instructor, Billy, then things are going to get very confusing very quickly. Billy is wearing an outfit that exposes her midriff, which is obviously appropriate for living in the North Pole. She encourages Santa to work out by making many passive-aggressive and sometimes just plain aggressive comments about his weight.
I received some very disappointing news yesterday.
Did your cholesterol test come back?
Ho, ho.
Santa may be an immortal being who's been around for centuries, but even he knows that the BMI system is out of date. Speaking of which, it turns out that fake Santa is actually real Santa. Not sure what he was doing in Santa Monica. Maybe he also has a weed guy. That would explain this next exchange of dialogue regarding one of the elves.
Last night, he accidentally turned my sleigh into a breakfast burrito. No, I did not eat it.
Could have fooled me.
It seems that Twixel, an unfortunately named elf, not a shitty off-brand chocolate bar, has gotten too old and senile for his position as the head office herald of holiday operations, or the ho-ho-ho. It's a shame they didn't run that joke past the Northern Orators Naming Operations Nullification Office, or the no-no-no, because they would have told him that joke was shit. As a result of this, Santa is now tasked with finding a new ho-ho-ho. Oh, so that's what he was doing in Santa Monica late at night, hanging around youth centers. He was cruising for some ho-ho-hos. Santa says that he's looking for someone with the distribution acumen of Amazon, but also someone who embodies the 5 sugar plum virtues. Billy and Santa helpfully explain what the fuck that even is.
Cool head.
Humility, cooperative nature, inspirational spirit,
And, of course, the 5th and most important,
a kind soul.
exactly.
They also need to be really okay with the idea of shoveling reindeer shit on a daily basis. This job also requires at least 10 years experience of being a ho-ho-ho, even though this is literally the only place where that job opening exists. All in all, it's relatively reasonable compared to most other job application requirements. Billy says that she knows who's dying to be the next ho-ho-ho. Eleanor, Twixel's daughter. We've yet to meet Eleanor, but judging by the precedent set by Billy, we can assume that she is Santa's personal therapist, who keeps telling him to get over his depression and stop being so whiny. Santa says he already has someone in mind for the position, and Billy's midriff is curious.
He's got a very good understanding of what people want because he's one of them.
One of who?
He's a normie.
A normie? As the ho-ho-ho? That's insane.
Demonizing normal people. I had no idea Santa's workshop existed on Tumblr. Santa says he needs to know if this candidate has what it takes to be the next ho-ho-ho, and he strongly implies that he needs Billy to help him find out. And by strongly imply, I mean he winks at her and then tells her directly what that means.
See, I'm doing this because I mean you.
Good thing he did that for all the confused blind people who bought this film. Santa needs Billy to visit the potential ho-ho-ho and give him a series of tests, all the while making sure that he has no idea who she is or why she's there, and then convince him to move to the North Pole. Well, I'm already on board with the whole not knowing who she is or why she's here thing, so top-notch job so far. There are several allusions made to the fact that Billy is some sort of round-eared elf, with Santa making several comments about her deformity. I had no idea ear shaming was even a thing. Santa's workshop. If you look slightly different from everybody else here, will make you feel subhuman. Merry Christmas! Santa offers Billy the gift of Twixel's Bell, a magical artifact to be used on her exciting journey to give a guy a job interview. And he warns her to only use it when she really has to. You know, like a Nintendo console. Mrs. Claus comes over and hilariously insists that everybody eat her cookies, like some sort of festive Mrs. Doyle from Father Ted. We then cut to a completely different scene, where Billy bumps into Mrs. Claus again. Apparently at the North Pole, time is cyclical. Mrs. Claus empathizes with Billy that she wasn't considered to be the new ho-ho-ho. Billy says it never occurred to her that she might get the job. That's right. This scene exists solely to reassure women that they should never aim to achieve anything above their station and just be satisfied with what little they already have. Also, if your ears look weird, get used to being ridiculed for it. Billy walks through some grand double doors and meets another elf. At least I'm assuming that's an elf. It doesn't seem to be any way to distinguish them from normal people. They're just adult human beings in sweaters and hats. They're either elves or Midwesterners. This particular elf/Midwesterner is kind of a prankster.
Unfortunately, we lost an elf yesterday, but I think we're okay now.
Are you serious?
Of course not.
Oh no, he's one of those people who laughs at his own jokes. What are they called again? Oh right, arseholes. This arsehole is in charge of the Peppermint Portal, which transports people to and from the North Pole. Peppermint Portal is also the name that Strawberry Shortcake gave her vagina in all of my fanfiction that I wrote. Eleanor the Elf arrives, played by the goddess of loveliness, Paige. You know, some people say that the war on Christmas was started by Paige. Oh no, sorry, they say that about the Divas Revolution. I got my meaningless wars mixed up. Eleanor interrogates Billy regarding her intentions toward the position of ho-ho-ho. I haven't seen two women fight this hard over the position of top ho since Dawn Marie feuded with Tori Wilson. Eleanor makes a crack about the shape of Billy's ears, and Billy defends herself by pointing out that Rudolph was similarly shunned. I, for one, can't wait for the inevitable WWE Studios remake of the classic Rudolph stop-motion short, where the island of misfit toys will just be littered with unpurchased Roman Reigns action figures. Eleanor shoots back at Billy, pointing out that she's never had a boyfriend. Billy seems more wounded by that remark than the fact that she wasn't considered for the new job opening. Women! They're okay being unemployed, but heaven forbid they don't have a dick in them. Billy disappears into the Peppermint Portal in a cloud of shitty CGI snow stolen from a Coca-Cola ad. Eleanor tries to find out from Chief O'Brien Elf where the transporter took her, but this guy's adamant that he won't tell Paige anything, even under pain of death. Eleanor then starts seductively playing with her pointy elf ear, and he changes his tune. Is she gonna fuck that elf? Hey, I know where Billy went. Interrogate me! Put me in your Peppermint Portal! We leave Canada, I mean the North Pole, where that totally was, and return to Dax's messy upscale home, where he receives a visit from Harvey Ward of True National Mortgage. Harvey tells Dax that unless he settles his debts, they'll have to foreclose on the property, and he'll have to move out. Ah yes, the true villain of the film. Harvey Ward from True National Mortgage. Truly, he is a worthy opponent for The Miz. You win this round, Harvey Ward of True National Mortgage, but Dax shall win the war. There is a war going on, right? Dax successfully wards off Harvey's evil machinations, and then he receives a visit from Billy, who has arrived wearing more clothes than she was wearing at the North fucking Pole. Because, you know, Santa Monica is known for having colder weather than the fucking Arctic. Dax invites Billy inside and hilariously stares at her butt. What a lovable, threatening white man. Billy explains that she represents an exclusive client who is interested in Dax's expertise, while Dax tries his best to hide the piles of dirty socks and uneaten hamburgers that he has somehow accrued in the space of 5 hours. Dax asks numerous questions about the job that she's offering, but as per Santa Claus's mandate, she refuses to tell him any real information beyond the fact that it's a top-level position. Oh, so this really is set in Los Angeles, because much like everybody else there, Billy is humble bragging about her job while still being under NDA.
Is this guy single name famous?
You could definitely say that.
Turns out Dax is actually going to be working for Drake. If you think the job application is confusing, wait till you hear the lyrics to Hotline Bling. Billy explains that Dax will have to pass a series of tests and impress her enough to actually qualify for the job. So rather than continue actively searching for employment, Dax instead chooses to believe the random crazy woman who showed up at his house with zero identification or paperwork and takes part in her series of Crystal Maze-esque challenges. We cut to Billy driving Dax around in a smart car, and Dax begs her to tell him that this isn't the company car. Billy replies that this car is very efficient, and efficiency is an important part of the job that he's applying for. It's true, what with the way Santa refuses to pay his elves for all their hard work. Nothing says efficiency quite like slavery. Dax continues to try and guess his future employer's identity.
Got the Donald written all over it. It's Trump. You work for Trump, right?
Santa and Donald Trump do have a lot in common. One of them is a rotund oaf who lives in a fantasy world where he alone decides who is naughty and who is nice, and the other one is Santa. Billy pulls over in a bad part of town next to a bar where a number of motorcycles have been parked. She challenges Dax to go inside the bar and tell the people in there that he dinged their bike. Oh right, I forgot that a huge part of being Santa's right-hand man is being a giant masochist. What do you think Santa does with that reindeer crop the other 364 nights a year? Dax is hesitant, but Billy reminds him that the alternative is unemployment. Dax walks into the bar, deciding that he would rather die than be one of the 99%. Before he can go inside, Billy makes him wear a green Christmas hat in order to embarrass him further. Ironically, this is the same logic behind why Vince McMahon made him wear the WWE title. We cut to inside the bar, where a group of bikers are drinking. One of them removes a bottle cap with his mouth and spits it out, which any seasoned Fallout player will tell you is a huge waste of money. Dax enters and informs them that he hit one of their bikes with his car, so they all gang up on him. Dax suggests that they let cooler heads prevail, so one of them dumps beer on his head. It's a good thing that all these bikers went to cliché school, otherwise they might have resorted to actual violence by now. Eventually a brawl does break out, which Dax survives by utilizing the Jar Jar strategy of ducking everything so that it hits somebody else. Miz tries hitting one of them with a pool cue, but its effect is much like this movie's on the box office. It doesn't have one. A biker throws a ball from the pool table at Miz, and once again we get another point of view shot of it missing its intended target and hitting somebody else in the face. You know, if I wanted to watch a movie that featured wrestlers and balls hitting people in the face, I'd watch One Night in China. It's much funnier, and somehow features more elves. The bartender knocks Dax out, even though everybody else is literally tearing her bar to pieces. Then the bikers try to actually murder Miz while he lies on the pool table like a sacrificial lamb. But he is saved at the last moment when Billy rings the magical bell that Santa gave her, giving her the ability to turn back time, which just ends up looking like she reversed the film's footage. Santa mostly uses that power to make hilarious vines.
Boys, don't want to be on the naughty list, do you?
Half of these men are wanted by the police for murder. I think they have bigger concerns than getting a lump of coal in their stocking one night a year. Back at home, Dax is nursing his wounds, having failed to learn an important morality lesson from walking into a bar specifically to get the shit kicked out of him by an unruly mob. But at least he's mature in his defeat.
Hey, they started it.
Or that.
That part of the job? Turning the other cheek when a bunch of bikers are about to rearrange my face?
It's a part of any job. Don't fight.
Ah yes, don't fight. I'm pretty sure those are the only words written in Brock Lesnar's WWE contract. Billy says it's time for the next test, unless Dax is wimping out.
I don't wimp.
Because it's not a verb. Dax asks why Billy made him wear that elf hat during his encounter with the bikers, and she explains that she thought it might throw him off his game. You know, the very straight-faced, business-like attitude that Dax has displayed up until now. That game. She also thought it would be funny.
Oh, you do have a sense of humor. I was beginning to wonder.
You've known her 2 fucking hours. Billy notes that Dax doesn't have a single Christmas decoration in his home. Yes, the very idea of somebody not celebrating a Christian holiday is baffling. Maybe she really is working for Donald Trump. Dax eventually starts to open up to his old friend Billy. 2 fucking hours. And he explains his deep backstory in which he never really got any Christmas presents and never had a reason to celebrate. Funnily enough, anyone who receives this movie as a Christmas gift will also have no reason to celebrate. Dax still rank with the filth of the previous scene, and every other scene goes to take a shower. Meanwhile, Billy takes it upon herself to summon Santa with the magical bell. But instead of Santa, she summons the transporter chief elf from earlier in the film, who is apparently named Footsie? Fritzy? I can't really tell.
Fitzy? So Fitzy, where's she going? Fitzy? Fitz. Later, Fitzy. Fitz? Fitz?
Whatever his name is, he's wearing Santa's clothes. And the last time we saw him, Paige was seducing him. Did she make him dress like Santa while she fucked him? Did this guy ho himself out? Footsie explains that he likes to dress in Santa's clothes while Santa's asleep. What a lovable, creepy stalker. He also says this bullshit.
I was adjusting the teleportation frequency capacitance.
Much like The Big Bang Theory, this movie is as scientifically accurate as it is unfunny. Billy makes Footsie swear to never dress like Santa again.
I promise. I will never transport another Frappuccino. Kidding.
Is Santa filling some sort of quota by hiring this guy?
Santa's clothes are his own.
If George Bailey had met Footsie the Elf instead of his guardian angel, It's a Wonderful Life would have had a much darker ending. Shorter too. Billy casts Footsie the Elf into a hell dimension, or back to the North Pole, it's hard to say, and then the real Santa shows up in his PJs. Because much like every other old retired person living in LA, he's given up on keeping up appearances. Billy demands to know why Santa picked Dax, a man who doesn't even celebrate Christmas. Santa explains his logic and the logic of the WWE booking team for the last 12 years.
Sometimes making the choice that makes the least sense makes the most sense.
Such as releasing this film to the general public.
The truth about human character will always reveal itself. I think inside Dax is a man of great character.
Oh, so behind the smug, sarcastic douchebag who thinks only of himself and treats women like garbage and is literally only paying Billy any mind because he thinks he can get a job out of it. Behind all of that, there's a worthwhile human being. Seriously, why isn't the job just going to Billy, a person who has all of the good stuff without any of that shit? Oh right, because tits. Santa leaves to go marathon old episodes of Castle in his pajamas, and the camera slowly zooms in on Billy, the real main character of this film, apparently. Billy and Dax are off on another grand adventure. This time they're going to a pizza place, specifically the kitchen of the pizza place, where the staff have decided fuck the health code, we're just going to allow random people to wander inside. Dax brags that he could cook with his eyes closed.
You ever heard the expression of true humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less?
It wasn't exactly on my yearbook page.
Yeah, apparently.
Mrs. Yearbook did, however, vote him most likely to become a mediocre reality star turned even more mediocre wrestling star. Billy explains that Dax's future employer finds humility to be an important asset. Oh, the loud guy who dresses in bright red and appears on all the Christmas merchandise? Yeah, real humble. Billy hands Dax a suit to change into, which turns out to be a monkey suit, as he's going to be the restaurant mascot at a kid's birthday party. The alternate title for this film was Five Nights at Missy's. The kids all spot Dax in his getup and scream delightedly. Meanwhile, all the adults in the nearby vicinity just scream. It takes an impressive 8.5 seconds for the kids to become disinterested in Dax, and the birthday boy leads an assault on him, pelting him with candy. Surprisingly, we don't get a point of view shot of the candy flying towards his head. Dax tries to punch the child in the face with his fist, but is stopped at the last minute by his conscience. Oh no, my mistake. He stops because he was spotted by Billy. So to clarify, Dax is Santa Claus's #1 pick to be his right-hand man. Right hand referring to the one that he will turn into a fist to punch children in the face. There follows a montage of the children forcing Dax to do humiliating things that embarrass the shit out of him, such as taking food orders from them, getting hit in the nuts by plastic balls, and signing on to do this movie. At some point, Dax realizes he's being watched by a perverted ent. Later in the party, the birthday boy is finally ready to eat his cake and to deliver some true Shatnerian acting.
Don't be mad at me because you have to dress like a monkey and do whatever I say. That's about your messed up life choices.
That last quote can be originally attributed to Vince McMahon in the documentary Beyond the Mat. However, it was cut from that film and had to find a home here. Dax then takes the birthday boy by the head and shoves his face into the birthday cake, shocking everybody at the party, including budget Maya Rudolph. Everybody is probably stunned. It's hard to tell what with the shit acting. Billy is somehow more stunned / acting shittily than everybody else. But Dax is able to salvage the situation by screaming food fight, and then Christmas hip-hop music kicks in as the whole party devolves into a giant brawl. Dax bonds with the selfish, shit-faced birthday boy who thinks the entire situation is about him. I know I'm surprised. Billy chastises Dax because all he managed to do was fix a problem that he created. Also the whole threatening violence to children thing, but apparently that's not worth bringing up with a future employee.
For the record, I didn't fight one single kid.
Good job not kicking the shit out of those children. You're hired! Billy chastises Dax for not taking this seriously, while he stands in front of her dressed like a monkey covered in silly string. Dax asks her to cut him some slack, since he isn't exactly operating in his comfort zone. We then see Eleanor the elf perched on top of the luckiest plastic tree branch in the world, where she is no doubt devising her evil plan. Hopefully she'll tell us what that is soon, as we're already 40 minutes into the movie. Back in the kitchen, Eleanor and Dax finally face off. If you're still wondering why they just let any old fucker wander into the kitchen, it's because they're filming a cheap spin-off to Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen called Heel's Kitchen. See, because they're both heels and it's a joke and... Fuck off, footsie! Paige puts her all into her film acting debut.
So you're my competition. Pitiful.
Turns out she's called Paige because she literally sounds like she's reading her dialogue from the script. Eleanor criticizes Dax's hopes of becoming the new ho-ho-ho, but he thinks she's talking about working at the restaurant.
One word of advice. If it gets out of hand out there, just start a food fight. Works every time.
As any shitty movie reviewer worth his salt on the internet could tell you, food fight does not work every time. Eleanor then finds Billy and tells her that there's no way Dax will become the new ho-ho-ho, as he is a normie. Billy counters this by saying there's nothing in the rulebook that says it can't happen. So already the Christmas rulebook is more defined and well thought out than the rules to pro wrestling. Eleanor says she's going to take a look into these so-called rules, and when she becomes the new ho-ho-ho, she's going to make Billy's life a living hell. She's already the fitness instructor to an eternally obese fairy tale being. How could you possibly make her existence more pointless? Well, that's it for part 1 of Santa's Little Helper. Tune in next time on Elf Enough, where we find out if Miz has been voted through to the final round. Either that, or you could just go watch Star Wars for the 18th time. Fuck it, Star Wars.